Hey you, yes you, see all these wonderful people right here? They are my Patreons. With the support I get from them, I can afford to do my passion as a career and bring you guys weekly videos. Want to join them? For just $1 a month, you can get videos 24 hours before anyone else. And for even higher tiers, you can get Polaroids, letters, and mystery boxes from me to you. And even fursuit parts, not to mention my eternal thanks. So what are you waiting for? Become a Patreon today via the link in the description. Thanks again, enjoy the video.
Excuse me. I'm Catherine Willows. I'm with the Crime Lab.
The Chicago Tribune, 19 people were hospitalized at a furry convention in Illinois after what's being called an intentional leak of chlorine gas.
What's a furry?
Is a furry, one of a growing number of people who believe that they are part human, part animal.
Furries and the media are often a pair that don't go together well. I'm sure you've all seen that one CSI episode. Or this news segment covering the chlorine gas attack on a furry convention. Us and the media don't exactly have the cruisiest relationship around giving the fandom big media exposure. In my time in the fandom, I've had the privilege, would you call it a privilege? I don't know, to have been involved in several news stories and short films surrounding the fandom. And I'm going to tell you the story about a few of them. I think my first interaction with the media, so to speak, was a university short film. And I find a lot of those do tend to reach out to furries as it's an interesting demographic to do their assessment pieces on. I think these guys were from QUT, but I'm not 100% certain. The way these ones tend to work is the film crew and interviewer will visit me at my workplace, which is more often than not my house, and will often come along to a fur meet to chat to the others to get some diversity in the cast. These guys were alright. They did give me uni meme lord vibes, but were pretty respectful. They tend to ask you a lot of things about how you found the community, what it is you do, about your persona, and the piece ended up turning out alright. I was in 2 more education short films, one for my creative industries high school and one for my friend's university assessment. I'll see if I can find the links to those and I'll put them down below if you want to check it out. In fact, I'm going to react to the Quacky one, which is my high school. Right now, I haven't watched this in about 4 years, so it'll be interesting to see. Let's react.
Looking sassy!
God, the old SPFM days. Simpler times.
It's many different things to many different people. To me though, it's a community kind of, like family.
There's V1 Sky. Oh God, there's me.
When I was little, I always loved animals.
Had that art.
I think that's something that's in general for most furries, that we always have this love of animals. And
so I think I would have been 17 at the time. So this was quite a while ago. This was 5 years ago. Oh dear. Yeah, almost 5 years ago. That's horrifying. But look at me. Look how young and full of life I look.
Doctor Who. It's all created off this one concept, and it just basically runs from there. I know a lot of people say that it's like a place to fit in. Not only is it that though, it's kind of so much more than that. These characters, they mean so much to people.
This was in my childhood bedroom when I was still living with my parents, in case you're wondering where that was.
Is no known animal. It is what's known as a critter. It's more of a combination of different traits just thrown together for the fun. Definitely out there for the fun of it.
I'm not a camera, or I just like the camera.
We'll muck around in any given form.
What sort of steering wheel is this one then? Here, give us that.
There's no limits that are set by society for us to conform by, because we have that creative ability and that freedom to do almost anything.
That was a good one. I really enjoyed being a part of that, and the kids from Quacky were wonderful. So shout out to Kevin and Co for that. That was a lot of fun, and I really enjoyed it. So thank you guys so much for that experience. But yeah, that was one of the first media pieces I was in. Now, these were mainly small universities and schools, not really anything big and scary like the news. Yeah, about that. So the first story I will cover about this is when we were in Japan. So we were waiting with our things to collect our rego, us little table of gaijin It's worth noting, no one else who had suitcases had their fursuit heads out. In Australia, at least, most of us will transport our suits with the heads like impaled on the pull handle of the suitcase so people can identify us, but not in Japan, apparently. We were standing out pretty hard. Anyway, this lady approaches us with a notepad. She asks us in very good English whether we would be okay with being interviewed for the newspaper. A lot of furs we had met enthusiastically said yes. Bolt and I just looked at each other like, oh god. As you just don't know how you'll be portrayed. And we weren't locals and this wasn't our con. But regardless, the interview went ahead with just basic questions being asked, like where have you come from? Are you visiting Japan for this convention? What is the fandom? Nothing dodgy. And the biggest fear of any furry being interviewed is that they're going to ask about the sexual stuff. But no. Luckily, she didn't, and she was very polite. And the next day, look what showed up in the Toyohashi local newspaper. I feel kind of awful about it, as we were foreigners and this wasn't our con, but I digress. It still happened, and it's a cool thing to have in my cabinet of cool shit. If anyone's curious what the article says, I'll do a rough translation for you. Definitely not using my Google Translate. Large gathering of animal character lovers held tomorrow in Toyohashi from home and abroad. The event J-Moth, where animal characters from Japan and abroad gather, began on the 10th at Loisia Hotel Toyohashi until the 12th. The J-Moth committee, which is made by volunteer enthusiasts, sponsors the event every year. It is expected that 1,500 people will participate in events such as meetings, illustration contests, stage shows, and so on. On the first day, there was an opening ceremony in the hall, and when the executive committee called out, "Please enjoy for 3 days," cheers came from the crowded seats. From 3 p.m. on the 11th, there will be a parade by participants wearing animal character costumes around the meeting place. And yes, that is somebody dabbing in the background. However, this still wasn't my biggest brush with fame. Earlier this year, I got contacted by a journalist for the Courier Mail. For people who aren't local to Australia, this is owned and operated by the same dude, aka this guy, who also owns Fox News. Yup. So you can understand, I was very suspicious. So I'm going to use my experience with this journalist to give you my tips for if you have to interact with the media. So first off, before responding to the email at all, I sent it off to a fur who's been in the community and the media far more often than I have, the CEO of Furry, to suss it out for me. She told me that The Weekender, the article section she was reporting for, had done a segment on the Brisbane furs in the past, and it was well written and mostly kind. She effectively told me to go for it if you want to, and that's number one tip for interacting with the media. Get furs who are well respected or have done media interactions before to suss it out. My second tip is to ask questions and ask a lot of them. Ask to see previous work of the journalist to see how they portray niches or people who are a little odd, and ask what the angle of the piece will be. Ask if you can see a draft before it's published. With larger corporations, you probably won't get this, but it's sure worth the ask. And if you see anything suspicious, don't. Just seriously don't. And that probably brings me to arguably tip 0, as I should have probably said it first. If you don't feel like you absolutely have to, do not interact with the media at all. You don't speak for all of us. If you're at a convention and you haven't heard anything about the media organization being at the convention, meet, whatever, forward them on to the con staff, meet organizers, or someone who's had experience previously. The reason I decided to accept this interview was if I didn't, she would go down the list until she found someone who didn't have enough experience to say no. And I had enough experience in witnessing and being involved in media interactions that I'd know how to guard myself against the dodgy questions. Funnily enough, the CEO was also contacted to be a part of the article as well, so now we are in this together. The first interview I did with the journalist was with all of us together to create a duct tape dummy for a friend. She came along and watched and asked questions, nothing dodgy, she was polite, and it went off without a hitch. The next portion of the interview took place at my house, and it was between me and a friend whose suit I was making for Furry that year. So I was pretty relaxed, and she asked us similar questions to last time until it came.
So, the sex. Lay it on me.
Oh, shit. And that brings us to tip number 3. Do not answer these questions. Just don't. If they really want dirt on that, they can do their own research, but you need to make sure it doesn't come out of your mouth, because journalists can and will take things out of context. I have a few go-to phrases when these types of questions are asked. One is, it exists, but it's in minority and it's not what we're about. 2, I'm uncomfortable answering those types of questions. I'd rather you not ask any more. Or 3, simply no. But she was persistent. My friend said my jaw dropped to the floor when she asked. My favorite diversion for those questions is to show how many children there are in the community, to put into perspective how inappropriate those questions are for a 22-year-old, let alone a large portion of the fandom. She also asked me if I've ever made fursuits, and regardless of the answer, you just say no. This article will be around forever, and you do not want that attached to your name forever. So finally, for tip number 4, acknowledge that this interaction could result in a poor portrayal of the community, regardless of how hard you try to have it otherwise. Journalists can be a bit sneaky at times, finding alternative interviewees that are perfectly happy to talk about their furry sex lives, and you may be attached to that. So please understand that first and foremost, it is a risk. You need to know you aren't going to save the community by doing this in any way, shape, or form. So in the end, the article was published, and you'll notice a big difference between the article for the online version and the article for the print version. But luckily for me, the article was pretty good. So I was overall happy with the outcome of it, and also intensely relieved. Have you guys personally had any interactions with the media and the fandom? I really hope not, but I'm sure you'll tell me anyway. Let me know down below, and I'll see you next week.